If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so honored today to have my dear friend Ismail Oyekan on today. Ismail's calling us from Los Angeles, and he's the president, the founder, and the program director of the International Electronics Recycling Conference and Expo. Ismail, thank you for joining us at Green is Good. You are a wonderful and exciting young entrepreneur doing great things. Welcome to Green is Good today.
Thank you so much, John. That is quite a welcome. I really appreciate it, John. How are you guys? How's Mike?
Hey, we're doing fine, and it's so great to meet you because, I mean, I've said this before, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, Ismail. Any friend of John Shigarian's is a friend of mine. John surrounds himself, I think with one notable exception, that being me, with with quality people.
Not true.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Like it's a pleasure as well. Like I said, I listen to the show, and I think you guys have amazing chemistry, and you guys really do live the phrase "green is good."
Thank you.
What you're doing is amazing, and I'm really honored to be here today.
So, Ismail, thank you for that, and thank you again for your time today to join us. Tell us why and how have you started this International Electronics Recycling Conference and Expo? This is your second one coming up soon. Tell us how your first one went and why you even started it. Give us a little bit of history here.
Absolutely. If you look at the e-waste industry, which is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I'm quoting ABI Research, was stated that the value of e-waste all over the world is currently valued at about $6 billion. And in the next, I believe in the next 4 years, it's supposed to be extrapolated that it will be about $14 billion. I had the aha moment when I looked at the landscape and wanted to learn more about the industry. So I realized that there weren't too many outlets where people could learn about this industry, the dynamics of it, and the reality is it's a new emerging industry. And so I wanted to create a platform for all stakeholders in the industry, be it electronic manufacturers, recycling firms, recycling associations, people in public office, people in academia, to come together and sort of brainstorm and speak about the trends that are going on in this industry, because it really is a global industry, and what we do out here affects people all over the world.
Well,
last year we were fortunate enough to be able to attract the brightest and the best minds in the industry, and we want to keep that momentum going.
What were you doing before you came up with this, with your epiphany and your great concept?
Well, thanks for asking. Over the past decade, I've actually been an electronic recycler in some form or the other.
Okay.
I used to work for Nextel Communications in the Bay Area. I was a corporate account executive when they first came out with the walkie-talkie phones. Everyone knows what they are now.
Oh, right.
And dealing with larger enterprise IT asset managers, there was a concern they had when I would offer them the latest and the best phone out there. They would always ask, what do we do with the old stuff?
Right.
And, eventually, just because I was a sales guy who wanted to satisfy my customers' needs, I would take all these phones with me and just kept them in a storage, and it became a burden on me. And so I had to really do a lot of research and a lot of homework on what will be an alternative market to dispose this assets to. And I realized that, what we use out here, sometimes it might be subsidized, and sometimes it might not be the latest and the best no more.
Right.
But it's brand new on the other end of the world. And so I started a company called Phone Drive USA, where we give people an opportunity to recycle their used cell phones, or even larger enterprises or now network carriers.
Right.
We give them a platform to recycle their assets when they upgrade their technology in an environmentally friendly manner.
Gotcha. So your second event, your second conference is coming up May 26th and 27th at the Hyatt Regency in San Francisco. Last year's event was in Los Angeles. Why did you move it to San Francisco this year? And tell us if people come to it and who should be coming to it, what can they expect to be there?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
My team and I looked at the world as a landscape, and with the word International Electronics Recycling Conference, we could have taken this anywhere.
Right.
But we were very convinced that San Francisco, being in Silicon Valley, which is the hub of technology, will attract a lot of bright minds. There are a lot of IT asset managers out there of larger enterprises. There's a large presence of electronic recyclers in San Francisco.
Right.
In California as a state.
Right.
California is at the forefront of the green revolution as far as electronic recycling is concerned. So we wanted to keep the conference here in California, because we feel that with the conference being in California, in San Francisco, it's a beautiful setting in a world-class facility. We have all the leisure activities planned out, like golf in Half Moon Bay.
Right.
And we just felt that San Francisco would be an ideal place for this year's conference.
For our listeners, though, I want to step back and go back to the e-waste, the crisis and the e-waste issue. Talk to us a little bit. Explain to Mike and I and to our listeners what comprises e-waste and what does the e-waste crisis look like in the United States and in the world, and then why is your conference such a great solution provider for this growing tsunami of e-waste that exists around the world?
That phrase tsunami is probably the best way to describe the e-waste crisis we have.
Okay.
But in the midst of the crisis, there's a significant opportunity.
Okay.
Because the reality is when manufacturers make their products, I'll take us back to chemistry class. Gold is a good conductor of electricity.
Sure.
The large presence of gold, copper, silver, palladium, platinum, and other precious metals in this electronic waste. Now, the issue is there aren't enough facilities in most of the countries this e-waste ends up to treat this electronic waste, which also has a lot of toxins in it, arsenic, mercury, what have you. So the reality is, that there has to be more information provided to people on the opportunities and the toxicity of e-waste. And we believe the conference, with the great caliber of speakers we have, sheds a lot more insight into that.
Ishmael, I'm thinking about this because you and John both know so much about electronic recycling, waste recycling, and with this e-waste, you make a very good point that there's just not a lot of knowledge about it among the general public, but also to get the gold, the copper, the palladium, all of the different metals that are in, say, a cell phone, right, or in a computer, all of these different things. Well, you've just got one piece of e-waste here, and it's really, you need to have a center to bring it all so it can be cost efficient, right, because of the volume, right? Just to extrude these metals that can be repurposed.
Right. And part of recycling is, it's not just about refining.
Right.
There's also the component of reuse. The typical American now uses a cell phone for 18 months. We're constantly introducing new technologies. The Apple iPhone is very successful. Also, other forms of cell phones that are looking to take their place. I've heard of the Droids, and I'm not here to push for this or that, but the point is, we always will upgrade our technologies because we want to have the best so that we can be as productive as we can be. What do we do with the old stuff? It's a very critical question because, we're all responsible ultimately for our environment. And the fact is, there are rarely situations where crises create opportunities. I believe John is a great example of that at his facility in Fresno. I've actually had the opportunity of visiting his facility in Fresno, where he has something I look at as a great example of what can be done with the e-waste crisis, is rehabilitating people's lives and giving them a chance to actually save this product from ending up in landfills. And I think that can be expanded all over the world, in regions of the world like Africa and Asia, where things are being done in sort of a backward manner.
Yeah.
We really just want to educate folks on the fact that things could be done better, and they could make a lot of money doing this.
But for our listeners out there that are all around the world because of the iTunes, the Apple iTunes that this show appears on, and the Clear Channel radio network across the nation, explain, Ismail, e-waste. What is it really? Is your cell phone e-waste? Is your laptop e-waste? Is your television e-waste? And should any of this stuff go into a landfill?
Well, it shouldn't go in a landfill, to answer that question.
Right.
But e-waste comprises of anything that typically you can plug in a wall.
Right. Got it.
It could be a television. It could be a cell phone. And the reality is there are two main generators of e-waste: large businesses and us as individuals. Businesses in manufacturing their products generate a lot of e-waste.
Right.
And the average American has about 4 or 5 cell phones laying out there. At the conference that we're doing in San Francisco,
yes,
we talk about the marketing trends that are being done by electronic recyclers, because the recycling rates just have to go up.
Right.
So that's why we wanted to do it in San Francisco. San Francisco, as a city, has the largest recycling rate in the nation.
Right.
So we want, and we
great
also,
idea.
The great thing about this event is it's also a networking platform and a learning platform.
Right.
And we highlight and recognize the best companies in the industry.
Okay, so that's a great point. And for our listeners out there that want more information after you listen to this show, I just want to give a quick shout out here. You have a great website, Electronics Recycling Expo.com. Electronics is plural, recyclingexpo.com. So talk about a little bit. Who will some of the great speakers be at your conference? So if people want to come and get educated to what the problem looks like and also what the solutions could look like, talk about some of the solution providers and the OEMs and others who are going to be coming and speaking at your great conference.
Absolutely, absolutely. Last year we had the pleasure of having you, John, as a keynote speaker.
Right.
We had Jim Parkett from the Basel Action Network.
Talk a little bit about that. Yeah, talk about Basel Action Network. Great organization.
The Basel Action Network, as you know, is the leading environmental watchdog group for people involved in the electronic recycling industry.
Right.
Jim Parkett, who runs that organization, is a great guy. He's been featured on CBS, where he actually exposed what fraudulent recyclers are doing,
right,
and how they, collect and deceive people, collecting equipment and then ending up just not responsibly recycling it. And I think, when you put great minds together, people who are involved in the business side, people involved in the watchdog side, you put people who actually do generate the scrap, and you put people who are enthusiastic and want to learn more about the business, you create great energy. There's always a lot of people will call those. There are a lot of people who called us back after last year's event, and we're very grateful,
right,
because they felt that they learned a lot about the business. And for the first time, what some people said was they realized that there's a strong demand for their services, but they were just going about it the wrong way.
Well, Ismail, I was there, obviously, at last year's event, and it was really, truly wonderful. For your rookie maiden experience and voyage, you did an amazing job and a wonderful job, and that's what everyone who attended said. Tell our listeners, though, how is it going to get better this year? Besides putting it in a different venue, which is great to move it. Moving venues is great, and putting it up near Silicon Valley is brilliant. I think my hat's off to you for that. Explain now how many other people are coming in terms of OEMs and who else is speaking now. How are you building on last year's success?
Well, we actually reached out to people we felt could help us.
Sure.
We've been very successful in attracting a lot more electronic manufacturers.
Great.
Commonly referred to as OEMs, like
right,
you just stated. And
right.
We have speakers coming from companies like Palm, Oracle, Extreme Networks.
Wow.
And we had a very low presence of manufacturers last year.
Right.
It was more like a recycling get-together
right.
party.
That's okay.
But this year, we really feel that we've built on the momentum from last year, and we have some quality speakers. One of them will be, hopefully, Mr. Dave Thompson, who runs environmental affairs at Panasonic, one of the largest OEM manufacturers in the world.
Mike and I were honored enough to have him as a guest a couple months back, so
right.
We know Dave, and he's a wonderful guy and a great spokesman for the electronics OEM industry and for Panasonic. He's a great guy.
Right, and we've also reached out to some of the speakers we had last year, including yourself, right. And several others who are very passionate about sharing their challenges, their experiences in this fast emerging industry known as electronic waste management.
Right. That's great stuff, Mike.
No, I'm just thinking that you get the best and the brightest and you bring them together. And we've spoken before. Just sometimes you don't even know what the questions are, but you get
right.
enough people talking.
That's right.
The answers sometimes are the easy part. It's coming up with the questions. And when you get a brain trust like this, so many people that are just fired up and bring different experiences to the table, you can't help but achieve critical mass.
And let me add to that. I think what's a bit different about our conference is the fact that we actually, not only do we invite people in the industry, but we truly invite people from all over the world. Some of our speakers are coming as far away as India. We have someone who was a former director of the Indian Ministry of Environment and Forestries.
Great.
We'll be speaking about electronic recycling in emerging nations, where that could be an opportunity for a lot of American entrepreneurs. And they're talking about what's going on currently in India, which is actually, as you know, a large country as far as population is concerned, and they also do have their own challenges regarding e-waste. And I really have a global perspective on this, because what happens in China, what happens in India affects the same environment us here in California, or other parts of the U.S., exist in. So we really have to be very careful to make sure the standards are being introduced, not only here in the U.S., but internationally, so that we can actually tackle this e-waste crisis and it doesn't get the worst out of us.
Well, that's a great point. You know, as you well know, Ismail, what Basel Action Network did in exposing that recycler from the United States that was dumping electronics into China, and there's others that are dumping it obviously into India and into Vietnam and other emerging nations like Africa. You know, a couple things. As you say, it creates environmental harms on the other parts of the world, but also, as we saw on the 60 Minutes special, which I know has been a theme at your conference and is going to continue to be a theme at your conference, there's also then children that are co-opted into the process of illegal recycling in emerging nations. So therefore, you have not only environmental harms, but you also have human rights violations. So I'm so glad, and we're so thankful for the conference that you're putting on. Who else are you trying? How many nations are going to be represented? Last year, I know you had about 20 nations. How many nations this year will be represented there?
We just started the registration process.
Sure.
But we have a strong presence of people here in the U.S., people from Canada, people from Mexico, people from South America. We have a delegation coming from India. We have people from Vietnam. So the message is really going globally. We're using the Internet as a great tool to market the conference.
Right.
We have a call center here in Los Angeles that reaches out to invite business owners and stakeholders in the e-waste industry, as well as IT asset managers of large enterprises.
Well,
and I'm convinced that we're going to have at least over 1,000 attendees at the event in San Francisco. So not only is it a great chance to learn about e-waste, but it's also a huge networking and learning platform for anyone who makes it.
I want to bring up a couple other points. I want you to explain the issue of privacy. Why is also recycling people's e-waste so important? Besides to do the environmental and sustainable right thing, and it's the right thing to do, why should people also be worried about hard drives and cell phone privacy issues getting into the wrong people's hands, Ismail?
It's a great question. The point is, there was a research that was recently done.
Yeah.
I think it was by Pike Research out of Colorado.
Okay.
And they interviewed a lot of IT asset managers. Excuse me, that was by Converge.
Okay.
And the VP from Converge will be one of our speakers.
Great.
They did a research study, and they realized that the reason why most IT asset managers, they asked them, very simple, what is the main criteria that determines who you pick as a recycler? And surprisingly, most of them said data security was a key issue. Companies are very, very skeptical about just giving away their hard drives to a wrong recycler. The fact is they have intellectual properties on there, and they don't want that information being compromised. People's social security numbers, people's private data. The fact is recycling, like John said at the last show, true recycling costs money.
Right.
And companies are now starting to realize that they actually have to budget for true recycling. As they, increase in their IT assets and try to get the best IT assets and migrate to different platforms, something has to be done about the other stuff. Otherwise, they keep paying a lot of money to keep it in storage. Now, when they do decide to pick a recycler, they have to be educated on what the process involves. A lot of companies don't know what ISO standards are. They don't have any environmental management systems in place. At the conference, they can learn the little steps from their peers on what it takes to do that and the costs and, of course, the benefits involved. So the issue of data security is very important, and there are 20 states now in the union that have enacted some sort of e-waste law that have huge consequences if they're not adhered to.
Right.
And I think a lot of companies need to be informed about these laws. Mm-hmm. There's a need for some training.
Absolutely.
As far as how the e-waste is handled.
Because, as you say, the laws are different in many states, so getting together at this kind of event and learning the idiosyncrasies of each state's laws, I think, is extremely valuable to all participants and all registrants.
Absolutely.
Hey, another thing, Mike and I are so lucky and honored to have great young people like you on the show who are entrepreneurs. We do have a large entrepreneur listening audience. We're down to the last couple of minutes here, 2 minutes or so. Ismail, share some of your experiences, 2 or 3 experiences in the last couple of minutes as a young entrepreneur with a great vision, and now how it's going and what you want to do with it in the long term.
Well, at this stage, all I'm trying to do is create a learning and networking platform for anyone who wants to learn about the industry, anyone who's involved in the industry. I mean, the truth is, Johnny, you can testify to this. There are a lot of recyclers in this industry who don't even know the dynamics, and they're embarrassed to say so.
Right.
There's no school that gives you a formal education on electronic waste management, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So people really learn from the school of hard knocks and by asking questions, and this event creates a platform for that. Of course, there's been challenges as far as like putting it together, but the truth is, as any entrepreneur would tell you, you keep your mind on the goal and you go for the gold.
So are you happy that we're down to the last minute? But are you happy you made this change and you're following your dream and your vision?
Absolutely. I love what I do every day. I talk to a lot of bright people who run great businesses, and they give me their ideas and their constructive criticism, and I take it all well. And at the end of the day, I believe it makes me a better person. And the truth is, I'm looking forward to this conference so I can get to shake hands with most of these people.
Well, Ismail, Mike and I, again, are thankful for your time today. And your last year's conference was truly, truly amazing. And I know this year's conference on May 26th and 27th at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Burlingame, California, by the San Francisco airport, is going to be even a better one. For our listeners who want to learn more information and register online, go to Ismail's great website, electronicsrecyclingexpo.com. electronicsrecyclingexpo.com. Ismail Oyekan, you are living proof that green is good.
It's been a pleasure to be on the show.